Are you looking for the ultimate boss killer? Outside of the Spiritborn, this Deathblow Barbarian is the one for you. Whether in a party of 1 or a party of 4, this build absolutely destroys bosses, and it is a lot of fun to push in the pits. We're going to go over the entire breakdown of the build. We're going to start with your skill tree. Hopping into the skill tree, we're going to start at the top. You're going to always take 2 points at the very top just to unlock your next portion here. We're actually going to take Frenzy because we're going to be using this as part of the way that we do damage depending on our situation. We're going to do 1 point into Pressure Point so that we can unlock Warpath. We're going to do 3 points into Warpath. This is going to give us an extra bit of overpower damage for 4 seconds. After overpowering, we're going to deal increased damage for 4 seconds. This build is an overpower build, so this will give us damage up all the time. Moving down, we're going to be going into Imposing Presence. 3 points here. This is not just for defensive purposes. This is also for damage. When you're running overpower builds, life equals damage. We'll explain that a little bit more when we get to the gear. This build is super tanky. We're still going to go 3 points into Martial Vigor. This is going to give us damage reduction against elites. Something that is very, very important to this build, and when we get to the gameplay loop, we'll explain exactly why, but Rallying Cry needs to have all 5 points into it. That's going to give us up to 76% regeneration on our Fury for 7.9 seconds. That is absolutely key to making this build run, because if we don't have that, then we do not have a Deathblow build. We're going to go all the way down through Tactical Rallying Cry. Whenever we use Rallying Cry, we're going to get 20 Fury. We will also get an additional 20% resource generation here. We're going to do 2 points only into Belligerence. Anytime that we use a basic skill, which is going to be Frenzy, we're going to get 9% increased damage. We're going to go 1 point into Warcry, all the way down through Power Warcry. This is going to give us some additional damage when there's a lot of monsters around us. We're going to go 3 points into Booming Voice. This is going to increase the duration of our shouts. We're going to go 1 point into Leap, just so that we can unlock it so that we can have some sort of mobility as we move through the pits. If you're running this build and you're running through bosses, taking Challenging Shout with Enhanced Challenging Shout for a little extra damage is an option for you. But for me, when I was running through the pits, I was using Leap. Love Leap, so this was a great option here. We're going to do 1 point into Aggressive Resistance, and we're going to do 3 points into Prolific Fury. We're going to be stacking all of the resource generation that we possibly can. So this will give us resource generation when we're berserking. We're going to do 3 points into Pit Fighter for additional damage to close enemies. And then we're also going to get 8% damage reduction here. We're going to do 3 points into Slaying Strikes. Whenever an enemy is in an injured state, which is below 35% life, then we're going to get an additional damage bonus while they're there. This is going to help if you do decide to push the pits. This way, when you get into that last final bit of life on those bosses and you're pushing a timer, you're going to get some damage boost to beat that timer. We're going to do 1 point into Exposed Vulnerability. Dealing direct damage with a Weapon Mastery skill causes your next core skill to make an enemy vulnerable. The way that this build is set up, we're going to be using Deathblow. Deathblow will be a core skill, and it will be a Weapon Mastery skill. We're going to go 5 points into Deathblow. Then we're going to go down through Enhanced Deathblow. This is going to deal 200% increased damage to bosses. When you get to the bosses, that is the easiest part of whatever run you're doing. We're also going to do Fighter's Deathblow. This is actually very necessary. If Deathblow damages at least one enemy, you gain 20 Fury. That Fury is then multiplied by all of your Fury generation. We have to have that part so that we can keep enough Fury to make sure we spam Deathblow. We're going to be doing 1 point into Thick Skin to unlock Counteroffensive. We're going to do 3 points into Counteroffensive. Whenever a Fortify is above 50% of our maximum life, we're going to deal extra damage. We're going to do 1 point into Irrepressible. Casting a Weapon Mastery skill fortifies you for 20% of your maximum life. We're going to spam Deathblow, which is going to be a Weapon Mastery skill, so we'll be fortified 100% of the time. Moving down, we're going to go 3 points into Heavy-Handed. This is going to give us a multiplicative for increased critical strike damage while we're using a two-handed weapon, which we will be. We're also going to do 3 points into Brute Force. You deal increased overpower damage when we're using a two-handed weapon. We're going to go 3 points into Wallop. Using your bludgeoning weapon is going to do increased damage if the enemies are stunned or vulnerable. Using Exposed Vulnerability adds vulnerable damage, so we'll be getting this bonus all the time. We're going to do 3 points into Invigorating Fury. This is going to be our source of healing, and it's going to be an incredibly huge source of healing. We're going to do 5 points into Wrath of the Berserker to get that cooldown reduction. We're also going to do all the way down through Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. This is going to take our Berserking bonus and increase it by 100% after we spend 200 Fury. Every single swing of Deathblow is 100 Fury, so we'll be getting this bonus up to maximum right away. And then for the key passive, we're going to be taking Unbridled Rage. The reason that we're taking Unbridled Rage is Deathblow will be a core skill. This is a separate core skill modifier than Unconstrained. Unconstrained is just going to take that 25% increased damage that we get from Berserking and make it 60%. So when we add in this 45%, it's a completely separate modifier on top of the 25. We're also increasing our Fury cost by 100%. That is actually very important to this build and to doing damage. That's the skill tree. Let's check out the Paragon board. When you're building a board this season, make sure you follow along with a planner. Now, this is my Moblytics planner right here. The benefit to using a planner is that you can look at the Paragon board and you can expand it through the entire thing. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. You don't have to pause the video. Try and make sure you get every little point in. Make sure you're going backwards just a couple seconds. Use the planner. It shows you everything that you're going to need to know. I have all of my builds here. I'll be adding additional variants. Now, what a variant looks like, if you go into some of the other builds, where variants are going to be along the top here. I will always add in a 300 board and then a regular board. Something that's going to be around 200 points for anybody that does not have a full Paragon board. You can still jump into the builds here. You want to make sure that you're building all of your legendary nodes and all of your glyphs first before you take any additional nodes anywhere else. Getting those glyphs unlocked and getting your legendary powers is the most important part when you build a build first. Inside the starter board, we're going to be running Ire. This is going to give us damage while berserking, which damage while berserking is very, very important. We'll get to why in just a couple minutes inside the Paragon board, but you want to be stacking damage while berserking to make sure you're getting additional modifiers. Whenever your glyphs reach 46, you're going to get an increased multiplicative damage bonus. For your Ire, it's going to be increased damage to close enemies. Moving up, we're going to be going into the Bonebreaker board. Every 12 seconds, you're going to guarantee an overpower. This is not our only source of overpower, but this is going to just add a little bit of extra overpower every 12 seconds. We're also going to be running Wrath. Skills that critically hit generate 3 Fury. That Fury is going to get multiplied by all of the resource generation, is going to help us maintain enough Fury to run this. This is also going to give us an increased critical strike damage bonus. Inside the next board, we're going to be running Blood Rage. This is where that damage while berserking bonus is incredibly important. Where it says that current bonus is at 45%, that is max. You're going to get 10% of your damage while berserking bonus up to a maximum of 45%. If we go in and we look at our damage while berserking bonus, it's going to be down at the bottom. I'm actually over here. So that means I can do one of two things. I can either remove an affix off of a piece of gear, or I can remove some of the points out of the Paragon board. Having over is not necessarily a bad thing. You're still getting additive damage from your damage while berserking, but it's going over the cap of whatever our Blood Rage node is. So if you want to move some points around to put things into other important nodes, that is a really great option to do. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Challenger. This is going to give us increased bonus to normal nodes. These are all of your normal nodes. So you get actually a pretty big boost to these, because normally it's 5. We're already doubled here. We're also going to get 10% increased damage to elites, and we're also going to do an additional damage to elites with the legendary bonus. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. Each time you make an enemy vulnerable, you're going to deal 20% increased damage. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants additional 20% damage. We should have 40% increased multiplicative damage up all the time with this node, because we always make enemies vulnerable through exposed vulnerability, and then we always are going to be overpowering too. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Dominate. This is going to give us additional additive overpower damage. Another 15 seconds are guaranteed overpower, and we're going to get increased multiplicative damage with our overpower. The final board that we're going to be running is going to be Carnage. While berserking, critical strikes increase your attack speed by 2% up to 16%. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Crusher. Crusher is going to give us extra damage while wielding a mace. While wielding a mace, we're going to get 20% increased overpowered damage, and then increased damage as a legendary node. So that is the Paragon board. let's hop into the gear. Now, this build does run several mythic uniques. Unfortunately for this build, those are very, very important. You need the maximum resources from the Grandfather. You need the resource cost reduction from the Ring of Starless Sky. The only one that you really can work without is going to be the Doombringer. You'll just do a lot less damage. And we'll talk about why when we get to the Doombringer. And when we get to the Shroud of False Death, I'll talk about why that one is super important for this build too. So starting out, we're going to be running the Crown of Lucian. We're running this because we need to be increasing the amount of fury that we're generating. Each time you use a skill with a resource cost, gain 15% increased damage, and the resource cost is increased by 30% for 4 seconds, and that stacks 5 times. It's a lot of increased damage, but it's also a lot of increased resource cost. This is why the Ring of Starless Sky this season is so important for this. We'll talk about that more when we get there. For the chess piece, we're going to be running the Shroud of False Death. The most important part, and the reason that this is so strong, is you get +1 to all of your passives. If you look in your skill tree, all of the passives here have blue. Those blue numbers are getting increased by the Shroud of False Death, which means that you are gaining a lot of stuff that you normally would never have access to. We have additional resource generation, we have additional movement speed, we have additional healing, additional damage reduction. The Shroud of False Death is probably one of the strongest mythics in the game. For the gloves, we're going to be running Inner Calm. Inner Calm deals up to 13% increased damage, and you're going to triple that if you're standing still for 3 seconds. If you watch the pit run that's going to be in the description of this video, you can see that I pull everything into a corner, and then I stand still and I spam Deathblow. That's to take advantage of this bonus here. For the affixes, that armor is going to change to attack speed, so we're going to run max life, attack speed, ranks to core skills. And then for the tempers, we're going to be running concussion, and this is where you can mess around with your damage while berserking bonus. If I took off my damage while berserking bonus from this here, from my tempers, I would be undercapped. So now I can remove some Paragon points in order to make sure that I can keep that temper there and still maintain my full bonus. For the pants, we're going to be running Tibolt's Will. You're going to deal 20% increased damage while you're unstoppable for 5 seconds. After that, you maintain that damage. When you become unstoppable, not while you're unstoppable, but when you become unstoppable, you're going to get 50 primary resources. For the boots, we're going to be running Yen's Blessing. Casting a skill has a 60% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. That can only occur once every 8 seconds. What that means and why we're running Yen's and why this is so important is that we're going to be casting Rallying Cry. Rallying Cry has a almost 20-second cooldown. We need this to be up 100% of the time because we need that additional fury generation. If you look, this is an uptime of 7.9 seconds. Yen's Blessing will cast every 8 seconds. That is a 0.1 second downtime as long as Yen's Blessing casts Rallying Cry while it's on cooldown. By running this combination, we maintain our fury generation and unstoppable 100% of the time. We also gain the additional bonus damage from Tibolt's Will because unstoppable never falls off. Now, for your masterworking crits, make sure you're following along in the planner. It will have all of what exactly you want and where to put your masterworking crits. I do not have my gear done. I'm not even close yet, and we're still hitting for almost 30 billion damage, and this has so much more potential. We probably can double that damage. For the mace, we're going to be running the Overkill. Deathblow is going to create a shockwave, dealing up to 80% of its base damage to enemies. This does not do nearly as much damage as Deathblow does. This is going to be whatever the base damage of Deathblow is, and then you're going to get 80% of that. That is going to be our source of AoE, because Deathblow is a single target skill, so we do not have any other AoE other than running the Overkill. So this is going to be the reason we pull everything into a corner, and then we attack outward, because it's a cone that goes outwards and not a circle around us. For the dual wield weapon, we're going to be running the Doombringer. The reason that we are going to be running the Doombringer and why this is so important, yes, it gives us damage reduction. That's not the most important part. The most important part is the max life. The reason that max life is so important for an overpower build, if you read what it says for overpower damage here, further increased at the moment of impact based on your maximum life and your fortify amount. When we have more life, we get more fortify, we do more damage. It makes us tankier, it makes us stronger. So the Doombringer is a really, really big source. When you get a triple crit into that GA, which I haven't done yet, it is 95% increased damage. You basically double your life. When we're looking at our next weapon, we're going to be running the third blade. This is actually what makes this build run. Your weapon mastery skills are now also core skills. They have no cooldown, but they cost fury. You're going to deal 70% increased damage. Their fury cost is going to be reduced by 5 for each of the additional charges the skill would have had. So what that does, that completely removes the cooldown on Deathblow. Normally when you cast Deathblow, there is a cooldown. It now costs 80 fury. We want it to cost a lot of fury because that's really important for doing damage, but we'll talk about that when we get to our amulet. And now if you look at the top where it says weapon mastery and core skills, this is a core and a weapon mastery skill. So it's all kind of coming together, but the third blade is absolutely key to that. For the slashing weapon, we're going to be running the Grandfather. This is going to give us additional critical strike damage and another source of max resources and a source of maximum life. The Ring of Starless Sky is the first ring we're going to be using. Spending your primary resources reduces the cost of your skills and increases your damage by up to 50%. When we get into the gameplay loop, I'll show you the cost of Deathblow and how high it goes when we're not running the Ring of Starless Sky, and we'll explain why this ring is so important, reducing your fury costs for Deathblow. For the other ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Red Fury. After spending 100 fury, every single Deathblow is 100 fury. Your next Hammer of the Ancients, Upheaval, or Deathblow will guarantee critical strike and do up to 80% increased damage. That means Deathblow has a 100% critical strike chance. We don't have to stack any critical strike chance anywhere. This ring makes it so that we crit 100% of the time. For the amulet, this is the reason why spending fury is so important. After spending 275 of your primary resources, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. Your critical strikes that overpower are going to deal an additional 60% increased damage. We guarantee critical strikes with the Red Fury, so we'll always be critically striking when we overpower. So we're always going to get that increased damage when we overpower. The faster we can proc this, the more and the bigger hits we do. That's the gear. Let's go over the gems, the runes, the expertise, and the mercenaries. For me, you're going to have to gauge where you're going to be at in terms of your gear. That's what's going to vary with the gems. Right now, I'm actually under cap for resistances and at cap for armor. If I feel like running incense every run, I can actually drop the skull and I can put in a diamond. I'll be cap here and I can use the incense to get my armor over cap. So feel it out based on your gear. Move the Paragon points around a little bit. If you don't have as many Paragon points, you may not have as much resistances or you may not have as much armor. So feel out what your character needs the most, and that's what you're going to pick for your gems. Inside of your armor, you're always going to be running rubies. Rubies are going to give you strength. The reason that we're taking strength is if you look here, we get 10% of our maximum strength as skill damage. And that's a multiplicative number. Inside of your weapons, we're going to be running rubies also. That's going to give us additional overpower damage. For the runes are going to go into our two-handed weapons. We want to maintain this strength in our armor, so we're not going to put this into armor. That works out to being more damage than putting gems into the weapons. We're going to go in our first one. We're going to be running Pak Om. You're going to spend 600% of your maximum resources, and you're going to get your War Cry. This is the reason we don't have War Cry on the bar, the reason that we take War Cry points in the skill tree. For the other runes, we're going to be running Tam Zal. Casting a core skill 8 times is going to grant you 20% increased maximum life. You could run Challenging Shout if you feel a little squishy. You can put in the runes for Challenging Shout and put 2 points into Challenging Shout. You'll get damage reduction plus max life. Since I'm not feeling squishy whatsoever, I took the points out of that, put them into some more offensive points, and now I'm running Tam Zal instead. For the expertise, and how expertise works, you do not have to be running the weapon that you're choosing for expertise. This gives you an additional bonus that you normally would have if you were running that weapon on top of the bonus that you're getting from the current weapon. We're going to be running your two-handed axe. Because this is just straight damage, this is pretty universal through every single barbarian build. You're going to get 10% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. That's it. It's pretty simple. It's the only straight damage multiplier that you're going to get, so two-handed axes are going to be the way to go. For the mercenaries, we're going to be running Subo. I did some testing, and I think that the damage I got was a little bit better running open fire than running bargaining chip, but I'm going to do a little bit more testing just to make sure. If you guys find something different, make sure you let me know in the comments, because then we can always update the planner and make sure that this is the route that we're going. When I was testing it out, I found I got a lot more damage out of open fire because it was on a shorter cooldown and it was a bigger multiplier. For your reinforcement, we're going to be running Variana, and we're going to be running Bloodthirst for the additional attack speed. Now let's talk about the gameplay loop. This is very important, and this build does require a lot of paying attention in order to get it to run. We do the most damage against boss dummies, and I like looking at big numbers, so we're going to put on a boss dummy here. When you're doing this, we have to have 100% uptime on Rallying Cry. We get that by running Yen's Blessing. Yen's is going to automatically cast Rallying Cry when it's on cooldown for us. That is only a chance, though, so making sure we get that 60% chance and not the 40% chance is pretty important to the build. Wrath of the Berserker is also going to give us a massive amount of Fury generation. If you look at the Fury generation, it's all the way down to the very bottom here. We're going to be running 50%. When we cast Rallying Cry, it goes up to 164%, but when we cast Wrath of the Berserker, we get 326%. Why that is so important. If we take off our Ring of Starless Sky and we cast Deathblow, even with our Rallying Cry up, Deathblow goes up to 176, and that's not even max that it can get up to. I end up running out of Fury because it goes up so high. That's why having the Ring of Starless Sky on is so important. When we have the Ring of Starless Sky on, you can continually spam your Deathblow. The reason is it costs 100 Fury. That 100 is actually perfect for us because we can maintain that generation. If you saw for a second, it actually went up to 200. That is what Deathblow goes up to without the Ring of Starless Sky on. 200, we cannot generate that. The old Deathblow last season, with the Starlight aspect, you were able to maintain that. So for your gameplay loop, we have our Frenzy on our bar for a couple different reasons. If you remember in the skill tree, we're going to get increased damage when we use a basic skill. Frenzy gives us a nice little green timer along the top here. That shows us 3 seconds. So we know that when Frenzy goes down, we have 1 second after that where we're still getting that damage bonus. If you look on your bar, which is kind of hard to see, it's right here. We're getting increased damage from our basic skill. It's also going to be an emergency in case we do run out of Fury. It does happen sometimes where Yen's won't cast Rallying Cry. So what you do when you're running this, you're going to start off, you run into a group, you're going to cast your Frenzy. So we're going to cast Frenzy, pop Rallying Cry, and then you just hold down the Deathblow button. You can always pop Wrath of the Berserker for some additional damage, and then that's it. You just let the damage happen. You can pop your Frenzy every now and then to make sure that you keep up that additional damage bonus, and you look for the chains above your head. That indicates that you're unstoppable. So see how I have nothing above my head? Yen's didn't cast Rallying Cry. Then I can always go back through. I can either use that will bring it back up, and then we just start attacking again. Even using your basic skill can proc Yen's. So you have a chance to re-bring Yen's Blessing to proc again and bring Rallying Cry back. This is how the build runs. Maintain your additional damage from your Frenzy, maintain your buffs, and then make sure that Yen's procs for you so that you can maintain enough Fury. But without Yen's, we don't do anything at all. So that's the build. Super fun. When you get into some bosses, you actually start hitting real hard. If you watch the run for the pit run that I have in the description of the video, we hit for almost 30 billion damage. It hits really, really hard. It's a ton of fun to play. It does require a lot of gear, and it does require some timing on your skills and a little bit of paying attention. If you like the build, let me know in the comments. I'm live every night. Stop by, say hi, theorycraft with me. Catch you on the clip side.